Damodaram Vasudevam Hari.
Achyutam Keshavam Ram Narayanam Krishna Damodaram Vasudevam Hari.
Achyutam Keshavam Ram Narayanam Krishna Damodaram Vasudevam Hari.
Achyutam Keshavam Ram Narayanam Krishna Damodaram Vasudevam Hari.
Shri Krishna Govind Hare Murare He Nath Narayana.
Hari Om everyone, Jai Shri Krishna. We warmly welcome you all to the online Gita Parayan and Satsang, the 10th session that has been happening this year. Today, we will be doing the Parayan of chapters 15 and 16. Shri Ganeshji has joined us to give the welcome address, and we will also hear a lecture on chapters 15 and 16 by Shri Kadir. Before we get started on the details for the day, just want to remind you that exactly a month from now, we are going to have the Sampurna Gita Parayan on Mokshada Ekadashi Day on the 1st of December. This is going to be held at PGP Hall. If you have already registered, thank you very much. If you have not registered, please go to the Gita Jayanti website, gitajayanti.org.sg, and please register. Please request your friends and family also to register. We are expecting close to 350 people to join us on that day to chant the entire Gita on the Gita Jayanti day itself. That is the Mokshada Ekadashi day. So just a month from today, easy to remember. So if you do it today, it's very easy to remember. Okay. With those words, we are going to have invocation prayers, and then we will have the welcome address, the Parayan, followed by the talk, and then we will open up for Q&A. Let me begin with the invocation prayers. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shuklam Varadharam Vishnum Sashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye. Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambam Karishyami Siddhit Bhavatu Me Sada. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Let me now welcome Shri Ganesh Kurup, who is the MC member of Shri Krishnan Temple, a very beautiful temple situated in Waterloo Street. They have been very supportive of Gita Jayanti activities for very many years. So Ganeshji, please welcome. Please deliver your welcome address.
Thank you very much, Anandji. Hari Om. My name is Ganesh Kurup, and I have the honor of serving as a member of the Management Committee of Sri Krishnan Temple, located at Waterloo Street, Singapore. Our temple had the privilege of being the lead organization partnering with Gita Jayanti last year, and it was truly a blessing to work hand in hand with the Gita Jayanti team in 2024. On behalf of Gita Jayanti, I extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to each and every one of you joining us today for the 10th online Gita Parayan and Satsang session. This morning's discourse will be led by Sri Karthiresan K, and we are deeply grateful for his time and wisdom. As many of you know, these sessions were once conducted in person. However, since the pandemic, we have transitioned to the online format, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Devotees from everywhere are now able to participate in the Parayan, transcending geographical boundaries, united by a shared desire to seek the truth and understand the deeper meaning of life. The Bhagavad Gita was revealed to deliver humanity from the struggles of material existence. Every one of us faces challenges in different forms. Just as Arjuna faced his moral, emotional conflict on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Gita reminds us that the Lord, as the supreme consciousness, is ever ready to guide us, not only when we read his words, but when we live them through practice, sincerity, and devotion. The path of bhakti taught in the Gita is both profound and practical, accessible to all who genuinely seek happiness and self-realization. The scriptures beautifully describe the Bhagavad Gita is like a divine cow about Krishna. The cowherd boy milks it. Arjuna is the calf, and the wise drink the nectar of its teachings. So let us all come together to drink this Amrita, the nectar of eternal wisdom, and quench our thirst for knowledge, truth, and divine understanding. May the teachings of the Lord inspire us to live with greater awareness, compassion, and purpose as we journey towards the ultimate goal of life. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ganeshji, for pointing out how much of nectar, Amritam, the Gita is for all of us. It is truly life-giving for all of us. We will begin by chanting that beautiful verses from the Gita. So we have Manjulaji who is joining us, who is going to start with Gita Dhyanam. Then we will chant the portions of the day, which is two beautiful chapters, chapters 15 and 16, followed by Gita Mahatmya. I will just bring up the text on the screen so that if you do not have the text with you, you should be able to follow the text on screen also. Manjulaji, over to you.
ॐ श्रीकृष्णाय परमात्मने नमः। अथ गीताध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे फुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावः दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकः केशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटम् नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधना बोधितं लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहरहः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति देव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। अथ पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः पुरुषोत्तमयोगः श्रीभगवानुवाच ऊर्ध्वमूलमधः शाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद स वेदवित् अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृतास्तस्य शाखाः गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन छित्त्वा ततः पदं तत्परिमार्गितव्यं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसृता पुराणी निर्मानमोहाजितसङ्गदोषाः अध्यात्मनित्या विनिवृत्तकामाः द्वन्द्वैर्विमुक्ताः सुखदुःखसंज्ञैः गच्छन्त्यमूढाः पदमव्ययं तत् न तद्भासयते सूर्यः न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तत्धाम परमं मम ममैवांशो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनः षष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात् श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्चायं विषयानुपसेवते उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वापि भुञ्जानं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढानानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषः यतन्तो योगिनश्चैनं पश्यन्त्यात्मन्यवस्थितम् यतन्तोऽप्यकृतात्मानः नैनं पश्यन्त्यचेतसः यदादित्यगतं तेजः जगद्भासयतेऽखिलं यच्चन्द्रमसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विद्धि मामकं गामाविश्य च भूतानि धारयाम्यहमोजसा पुष्णामि चौषधीः सर्वाः सोमो भूत्वा रसात्मकः अहं वैश्वानरो भूत्वा प्राणिनां देहमाश्रितः प्राणापानसमायुक्तः पचाम्यन्नं चतुर्विधं सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टः मत्तस्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यः वेदान्तकृत् वेदविदेव चाहम् द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके क्षरश्चाक्षर एव च क्षरः सर्वाणि भूतानि कूटस्थोऽक्षर उच्यते उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेत्युदाहृतः यो लोकत्रयमाविश्य बिभर्त्यव्यय ईश्वरः यस्मात्क्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रथितः पुरुषोत्तमः यो मामेवमसम्मूढः जानाति पुरुषोत्तमं स सर्वविद् भजति मां सर्वभावेन भारत इति गुह्यतमं शास्त्रम् इदमुक्तं मया नघ एतद् बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् स्यात् कृतकृत्यश्च भारत ॐ तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे पुरुषोत्तमयोगो नाम पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः। अथ षोडशोऽध्यायः दैवासुरसम्पद्विभागयोगः। श्रीभगवानुवाच अभयं सत्त्वसंशुद्धिः ज्ञानयोगव्यवस्थितिः दानं दमश्च यज्ञश्च स्वाध्यायस्तप आर्जवम् अहिंसा सत्यमक्रोधः त्यागः शान्तिरपैशुनम् दया भूतेष्वलो लुप्त्वं मार्दवं ह्रीरचापलम् तेजः क्षमा धृतिः शौचम् अद्रोहो नातिमानिता भवन्ति सम्पदं दैवीम् अभिजातस्य भारत दम्भो दर्पोऽभिमानश्च क्रोधः पारुष्यमेव च अज्ञानं चाभिजातस्य पार्थ सम्पदमासुरीं दैवी सम्पद्विमोक्षाय निबन्धायासुरीमता मा शुचः सम्पदं दैवीम् अभिजातोऽसि पाण्डव द्वौ भूतसर्गौ लोकेऽस्मिन् दैव आसुर एव च दैवो विस्तरशः प्रोक्तः आसुरं पार्थ मे शृणु प्रवृत्ति प्रवृत्तिं च निवृत्तिं च जना न विदुरासुराः न शौचं नापि चाचारः न सत्यं तेषु विद्यते असत्यमप्रतिष्ठं ते जगदाहुरनीश्वरम् अपरस्परसम्भूतं किमन्यत् कामहैतुकम् एतां दृष्टिमवष्टभ्य नष्टात्मानोऽल्पबुद्धयः प्रभवन्त्युग्रकर्माणः क्षयाय जगतो हिताः काममाश्रित्य दुष्पूरं दम्भमानमदान्विताः मोहात् गृहीत्वा सद्ग्राहान् प्रवर्तन्ते शुचिव्रताः चिन्तामपरिमेयाञ्च प्रलयान्तामुपाश्रिताः कामोपभोगपरमाः एतावदिति निश्चिताः आशापाशशतैर्बद्धाः कामक्रोधपरायणाः ईहन्ते कामभोगार्थम् अन्यायेनार्थसञ्चयान् इदमद्य मया लब्धम् इमं प्राप्स्ये मनोरथम् इदमस्तीदमपि मे भविष्यति पुनर्धनम् असौ मया हतः शत्रुः हनिष्ये चापरानपि ईश्वरोऽहमहं भोगी सिद्धोऽहं बलवान् सुखी आढ्योऽभिजनवान् अस्मि कोऽन्योऽस्ति सदृशो मया यक्ष्ये दास्यामि मोदिष्ये इत्यज्ञानविमोहिताः अनेकचित्तविभ्रान्ताः मोहजालसमावृताः प्रसक्ताः कामभोगेषु पतन्ति नरकेषु च आत्मसम्भावितास्तब्धाः धनमानमदान्विताः यजन्ते नाम यज्ञैस्ते दम्भेनाविधिपूर्वकम् अहङ्कारं बलं दर्पं कामं क्रोधं च संश्रिताः मामात्मपरदेहेषु प्रत्विषन्तोऽभ्यसूयकाः तानहं द्विषतः क्रूरान् संसारेषु नराधमान् क्षिपाम्यजस्रमशुभान् आसुरीष्वेव योनिषु आसुरीं योनिमापन्नाः मूढा जन्मनि जन्मनि मामप्राप्यैव कौन्तेय ततो यान्त्यधमां गतिम् त्रिविधं नरकस्येदं द्वारं नाशनमात्मनः कामः क्रोधस्तथा लोभः तस्मादेतत्त्रयं त्यजेत् एतैर्विमुक्तः कौन्तेय तमोद्वारैस्त्रिभिर्नरः आचरत्यात्मनः श्रेयः ततो याति परां गतिम् यः शास्त्रविधिमुत्सृज्य वर्तते कामकारतः न स सिद्धिमवाप्नोति न सुखं न परां गतिम् तस्माच्छास्त्रं प्रमाणं ते कार्याकार्यौ व्यवस्थितौ ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं कर्म कर्तुमिहार्हसि ॐ तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे दैवासुरसम्पद्विभागयोगो नाम षोडशोऽध्यायः। अथ गीतामाहात्म्यम्। गीताशास्त्रमिदं पुण्यं यः पठेत् प्रयतः पुमान् विष्णोः पदमवाप्नोति भयशोकादिवर्जितः। गीताध्ययनशीलस्य प्राणायामपरस्य च नैव सन्ति हि पापानि पूर्वजन्मकृतानि च मलनिर्मोचनं पुंसां जलस्नानं दिने दिने सकृत् गीताम्भसि स्नानं संसारमलनाशनम्। गीतासु गीता कर्तव्या किमन्यैः शास्त्रविस्तरैः या स्वयं पद्मनाभस्य मुखपद्मात् विनिसृता। भारतामृतसर्वस्वं विष्णोर्वक्त्राद् स्मृतं गीता गङ्गोदकं पीत्वा पुनर्जन्म न विद्यते। सर्वोपनिषदो गावः दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। एकं शास्त्रं देवकीपुत्रगीतम् एको देवो देवकीपुत्र एव। एको मन्त्रस्तस्य नामानि यानि कर्माप्येकं तस्य देवस्य सेवा। हरिः ओं तत्सत्। श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
Thank you very much, Manjula ji, for the beautiful, slow-paced, medium-paced that we could all follow and chant together. Very nicely chanted, invoking Lord Shri Krishna on this holy day of Ekadashi. Thank you so much. We will now go to the next part of the online Gita Parayan and Satsang. I will going to shortly invite Shri Kadir to give us a lecture on these two beautiful chapters which we have just heard Manjula ji chant on chapters 15 and 16. But before Shri Kadir begins, it is my duty to introduce Shri Kadir to the audience here. Shri Kadir is a Vedanta teacher who is rooted in the Advaita Vedanta tradition of Sri Shankara. He has trained under Swami Satprakashananda Saraswati of Atma Vidyavanam. Swamiji himself is a direct disciple of the renowned Pujya Swami Dayanand Saraswati ji. Kadir holds a PhD in yoga, philosophy, and meditation, and he is an MBA. It reflects a beautiful blend of both traditional wisdom and contemporary knowledge. He is also a very well-published author. He is an author of 40 Steps to Liberation, a commentary on the Sadhana Panchakam, and as another book, the Advaita Vedanta of Shiva Samhita, a Vedantic commentary on the first chapter, and also several other books on secular mindfulness. His work, just like his education, it bridges ancient philosophical concepts with modern applications such as neuroscience, psychology, and mindfulness. Currently, he teaches weekly online Vedanta classes, so we are really privileged to have Shri Kadir join us today. Over to you, Shri Kadir, for we are very eager to listen to your lectures on chapters 15 and 16.
Thank you, Ji, for the warm welcome. Namaste, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here to talk about this subject, which is perhaps very, very close to all of our hearts. Before we begin, let's begin with an invocation. I'm going to present this through a deck of slides so that you have some visual reference as well as to what I'm going to talk about. I hope to cover this topic in less than an hour. That's my goal. So let's begin. Om Sadashiva-Samarambham Shankaracharya-Madhyamam Asmadacharya-Paryantam Vande Guru-Paramparam Chaitanyam Sarvagam Sarvam Sarvabhuta-Guhashayam Yat Sarva-Vishayatitam Tasmai Sarvavide Namaha. Today, the topic that I'm going to talk about is about chapters 15 and 16. There is no chapter in the Gita that is not valuable. Every chapter of the Gita is valuable, and every chapter has something unique to offer. And in the same manner, chapters 15 and 16 are also very unique. And I'm going to share today about what I have learned from these chapters. And the way that I'm going to present this, it's also very important to me, and I believe it's also might be very helpful to you as well, which is I'm using the Bhagavad Gita like a mirror to work on oneself, as opposed to perhaps understanding the verses. What do I mean by that? Sometimes the Gita has so much to offer that we can study the Gita on its own to understand what it teaches. Now, another perspective that I would say is a second way of looking at the Gita is to look at Gita as a manual so that I can work on myself. So I'm taking the second approach in the presentation today so that we can use the Bhagavad Gita like a mirror so that I can look myself in the mirror and work on myself. And I think chapter 15 and 16 are very beautiful because it really helps us to accomplish this. Secondly, whenever you see numbers like this in the bracket, can you see here 320-21? It means chapter 3, verses 20 to 21. So in chapter 3, Bhagavan Krishna says that when the Gita's teachings are followed, in other words, the teaching of the Gita, one becomes a role model for being a positive contributor to oneself, others, and the world. And the word that is often used is Loka Sangraha, meaning that for the well-being of the world. So one of the unique things that I really appreciate the Bhagavad Gita for is that when the Bhagavad Gita is understood, not only does it confer liberation, but it can also allow us to contribute to the world, so that the well-being of the world is secure. So in that sense, even if some of us might not be seeking liberation, or perhaps some of us, that's not my goal, but yet we can learn from the Gita in a way that we can become very good, very positive, and very purposeful human beings. Now, that is very, very helpful because today we see a world that is fractured and chaotic. And there has never been a time where the world wasn't fractured or wasn't chaotic. Let's face the truth. So the Gita can be very helpful for us to contribute to a world where these very chaotic and very, very unhelpful energies can be balanced, right? So that is how I see the Gita as well. And lastly, I want to acknowledge that I've used Adi Shankara's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita to unfold the teachings of the 2 chapters that we have, that we are going to talk about. So at least we know where it is coming from. With that, let's start with the chapter 15. It is called Purushottama Yoga. Now, Purushottama Yoga has 20 verses. Let me give you some, like a bird's eye view of what the chapter is all about before I look at specific areas. It has 20 verses. It has several sections. Now, these sections are not what I call, there is no consensus in when it comes to these sections. This is how I look at the sections. The first section is on the Ashwatha tree metaphor of the worldly life, or what we call as samsara, which I'll talk about in a while. And then there is the verses 5 to 6 that presents the liberated state, the state of mukti, or someone who has attained moksha. How does it look like? You have all of these verses in all the different parts of the Gita, just so that you know. Now that is unique to this chapter. And then the next set of verses talk about the sense of individuality that we have. I feel that I'm a jiva. The term that is used as jiva, or the individuality, is called jivatva. So this individuality is presented. And then the next set of verses, God's immanence and transcendence, how Ishvara is in the universe and also so-called beyond the universe, beyond in inverted commas. And what is the result of gaining the knowledge of Purushottama? Purushottama refers to Krishna or Ishvara, all right, the highest supreme reality or the highest supreme being. That's what the Purushottama here means. So now let's look at why chapter 15. So Shankara shares why chapter 15 is important when he introduces chapter 15. Let's look at it very quickly before we look at the topics. You see, he says that chapter 15 presents the knowledge of the self, Atma Tattva, and is very unique. It comes from the first person voice. Krishna uses the first person voice, meaning I, me. That's what it means. So he uses the word I and me, but in the first person voice. Now, whenever a text uses the first person voice, it also means that you and I also have the opportunity to reflect it from the first person voice. Now, this is very, very powerful, meaning that I don't look at the knowledge as a concept, but I look at the knowledge as something that I can bring into my life, into me. So this is very, very crucial when we look at this perspective. Now, he also says that the chapter is to generate vairagya, or sometimes called detachment, through the inverted Ashwatha tree metaphor, is presented, the inverted tree, which I'm going to show in a while. And when there is a dispassion towards samsara, meaning the life that we are living, now that becomes a primary prerequisite to know the self or the truth of the Lord. Now, this is a very important point, because what the Gita is saying is, just like any other body of knowledge, for it to be understood, we need some prerequisites. Like before you go to a university, you need to make sure that you have prerequisites. And before you go to, let's say, a particular field of study, there are some prerequisites. In the same manner, here, for the understanding of the self, there are some prerequisites. But however, I want to caution that these prerequisites are not certificates, are not academic qualifications. They are actually mental capacities. They are mental attributes. They are the qualities of the mind that's being referred to here. All right, they are not certification. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to give a certificate based on someone's quality of mind. Let's face it, because it is subjective, and that makes this knowledge perennial, always relevant, because nobody's going to get certified by having what I call cultivated these attributes. So these prerequisites are not to be mistaken with academic qualifications or any kind of certificates that we carry as a badge of honor. These are mental qualities that are necessary for us to assimilate and internalize this knowledge. Now, with that, let us now look at chapter 15. Now, I'm unfolding the knowledge that I've gained from chapter 15 through questions. So I'm going to answer questions. So by answering questions, you could also perhaps find some value. So I'm not going through the sequence of the verses, but rather I'm distilling. All right, it's like what we call as a sangraha, in the tradition, where we compile the verses to make sense out of it. I'm not saying the Gita needs to be made sense. The Gita doesn't need any improvement. Just so that I'm making sense of this so that it's valuable to me, and perhaps by sharing this, it might be valuable to you. Okay, so these are the questions I want to answer. What is the final goal of life? What is the problem that is in the way to achieving the final goal? Why do I experience samsara? Samsara means the life of what I call dissatisfaction, the life of suffering, the life of dukkha, or sometimes the cycle of births and deaths. What is the nature of the self? What do I need to do to achieve the final goal? Back to the first question. Where is this truth seen, and how do I see it? So I hope these questions are relevant to you as well. As a sadhaka, these questions were very, very relevant to me, because these are the questions that I hope to have found the answers, so that I can take very, very conscious step towards achieving the final goal. I always say this: when the destination is not clear, the path is also not clear. Don't you agree? Right? When the destination is not clear, the path is not clear. So we need to know the destination very clearly. When the destination is very clear, the path becomes clear. You cannot book a flight without knowing where you want to land. Correct? Right? I need to know the destination. If not, there is no value in buying a flight ticket. In the same way, we need to understand this very clearly, and I'm unfolding through these questions. So what is the final goal according to this chapter? The final goal here is, having removed ignorance, I see the Purusha in all things. Here the term Purusha refers to God or Ishvara or Krishna. So here, what does it mean? The final goal is when I remove ignorance or delusion. Okay, so when delusion is removed, what happens is I automatically see God in all things. Now, we need to be very clear here. When the word all is used, it includes ourselves. Now, this is a very, very key point, because it's easy to say all and then exclude ourselves. Correct? So when the term all is used, it means that we are also included. That means I also see Bhagavan, I also see Ishvara in myself. And one of the things that the opening address was delivered, it was very clearly said that one of the key attributes of Bhagavan is actually consciousness. In fact, we say Bhagavan is the nature of consciousness. A Sanskrit word that is often used is Chaitanya or Chit. So Bhagavan is in the form of consciousness. So we can also understand that when the ignorance is removed, I see consciousness is in all things, including myself. And when I use the word consciousness, is consciousness with a capital C, not the small c. Small c consciousness referred to cognitive functions. Here we are talking about the absolute consciousness that makes the universe even evident. So I want to qualify that. Now, after removing ignorance and seeing the consciousness of Purusha in all things, including myself, what happens then? I become wise. I become wise according to the Gita. The Gita uses the term buddhiman, meaning that the one who has this knowledge. So who is a buddhiman or the wise? The wise is a person who has attained liberation. This is what it means. So the final goal is very, very clear. The final goal is actually liberation. Liberation, other terms for liberation that are used in our tradition could be mukti, moksha, kaivalya, etc. The one who has attained liberation can be called mukta, can be called jivan mukta, etc. And in the Gita, several terms are used for the liberated person. For example, Atmavan, sometimes Sthita Prajna. Here in this chapter, the word Buddhiman is used. So what does this? Why are there several words used in the Gita? In our tradition, very simple, don't get stuck with the words. But understand what the word is telling us. So when we use different words for the same reality, it invites us to examine what the word is trying to teach us, as opposed to getting stuck with the word. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we see several different words used for the same thing. Why? Because it's an invitation for us to think. Otherwise, we will chant, we will repeat, but we won't investigate into the nature of what it's trying to teach us. So to summarize, what is the destination, the final goal before we take the flight? Is liberation. This is what the chapter says. Next, what is the problem? Right? You see, there is no solution without a problem, correct? What is in the way? Why do I want to seek liberation? So what is the problem? Here, the Gita gives a nice metaphor, very beautiful illustration, which is an inverted tree. We look at this image, the tree is upside down. The roots are in light. It's very nice. Roots are above the ground, meaning that the roots are facing the light, exposed to the light, while the branches and the leaves are underground, below ground, in darkness. So this is a very nice metaphor, you see. So we know that the root of the tree is the most important thing, because that's what supports everything else. So here in the metaphor, Ishvara is the root, the moolam, they call it, right? The root of this whole existence. Then everything else is depending on that. But what does this tree represent? The tree represents the world actually that we live in. The whole tree here that you see represents the world that we all live in. That means you and I are also part of this tree. Let's be very clear. We're not looking at a concept. I want to be very clear. We are part of this tree. The world that you see here now, just look around you. It's part of this tree. So in this tree, that the universe that we see, in this world that we live in, what is the root? The root is actually Ishvara. The technical word that is used in the Gita is also called Avyakta. Sometimes it means the unmanifest. Okay, but it also refers to Ishvara in one form, in one way. So now let's put Ishvara aside for the moment. Let's look at the rest of the things. He says the trunk that leads up to the branches, it's karma, he says. Karma is a very important, karma here means action. So if you realize everything in this world that is where there are creatures and sentient beings, we do action, don't we? Don't you agree? Is there a moment that you don't do any action? Even in sleep, you are breathing. Correct? Every time we are performing action. So action drives the universe. So in our life, action drives us. And why do we perform actions? You can see now the branches coming out as sense objects, because actions are primarily performed to acquire or to engage with sensory objects in the world, isn't it? So therefore, actions are leading to sense objects. And then this is what our life is all about. Our life just predominantly is all about action and trying to gather and acquire things in the world. Basically, we try to, very simple, we try to acquire things that give us pleasure and push away things that give us the opposite, which is pain. That's our life. Every day, that's what we do. We avoid pain and seek pleasure. That's what we do, basically, naturally. It's very instinctive, actually. But there is a very unique thing. The leaves of this tree is seen as the Vedas. It's very beautiful. Okay, the leaves, however, of this tree, though it's in darkness, just imagine this, right? It's in darkness, but the Vedas are also part of this darkness, but they are leaves. So what does this mean? Let's now unpack it, okay? So let's look at this one by one. Now, what is the problem? The problem is samsara. What is samsara? This whole world that we live in, where we constantly engage in action, trying to acquire sensory objects. That is samsara, to summarize. So when you use a definition of samsara, there are many definitions, many ways to describe it. Sometimes people say it's the life of birth and death, etc. That's one way of looking at it. Another way is to look at a life where we are constantly engaged with actions, with sensory objects. And because of that, we come back again and again, in this world. So it says Ashwata. So Shankara says the word Ashwata, you know what it means? It does not last even a day. That's the meaning of Ashwata. Very beautiful definition he gives. That means, what does it mean? It means that this world is not permanent. This is the key point. The world that we live in is not permanent. Why is it not permanent? Because it's always changing all the time. As you would have heard, change is a constant. That is the nature of the world, including ourselves. There's always this change, he says. He says changing every moment by sustaining series of bodies, etc. without beginning. He says the word avyaya comes here. We have taken many births. We will be taking many births, suppose if we don't get liberated. And this series, it goes on and on and on. That's the nature of samsara. Then he says, a very nice qualification he makes. The leaves protect the tree. Though it is in darkness, the leaves protect the tree. In the same way, the Vedas, the scriptures, protect the world by revealing dharma, adharma, papa, and punya. So what does this mean? This is a very, very beautiful contrast. Though the world and the whole idea of engaging with the world is in darkness, there is a ray of light. Can you see that, my friends? There is still a ray of light. And what is this ray of light? Which is the Mula Shastra, the most important scripture in the Hindu tradition, which is the Vedas. And why is the Vedas so important? Because while I'm in darkness, it still gives me this sense of direction, this ray of light, by showing me what is dharma, right, duty, etc. What is adharma, wrong and unwholesome. What is papa, the result of adharma, demerit. And what is punya, the result of dharma, which is merit. Without this ray of light, we cannot live in this world with happiness. So though we are in this samsara, there is one thing that gives us hope, and that is Veda. Look at the way the Veda is looked at. The Veda Shastra, those of you who may not know what the Veda is the most, what I call authoritative scripture in the Hindu tradition. So he says, when the tree is known, you become omniscient because there is nothing else to be known. So, and yet this is the tree of samsara. Though the Veda is there, and when you understand the tree, you is as good as understanding the whole world. right? Having understood the whole world, you understand everything by virtue of knowing the Veda. And yet, even though you know all of this, but we need to understand that it is still samsara. So even if you know the Veda, it is still samsara, because you know why? Knowing the Veda is not just enough, which means that we need to know which we'll see later, what the Veda teaches. Okay, that's the important part. So this is the first answer to the question. What is the problem? The problem is samsara. And we are constantly engaging with the world, therefore we are suffering. Now, why do I experience samsara? So here, very beautifully, he says, because I see myself as an individual experiencing the world. That's why I experience samsara. Why? Because I see myself as a separate being. And then here Shankara gives a very nice example. He says, the way you are looking at the world, the experience of the world as something separate from you. It means I and the world, correct? I consider myself me living in the world. So I and the world. So I and this. If you point at anything outside of you, there is a separation. He says this is a subjective error. It is not an objective error. Objective errors are outside of you. Subjective errors are inside us. And he gives 3 examples. He gives dream. Only the dream only you can see. I cannot see your dream. It's your error. It's your creation. Then he also gives like a water of the mirage. You know, in a desert, you see a mirage. It looks like water. Subjective error, because you are seeing it. It's your error. And city in the sky, he says, Gandharva Nagara, he used the word, you know, which is city in the sky. Basically, in a cloud, sometimes you looks like a shape of a city. You know, so we mistake it to be a city, but actually it's not. So it's a subjective error, he says. If the error is subjective, if the error is within me, where is the solution? Also within me, isn't it? Correct? If the error is inside me, then the solution must also take place within me. That's why we are learning the Gita in the first place. So he says this individuality is experienced due to the work of avidya. Avidya means ignorance, okay? And there's one nice term Shankara uses, avidya krita, which is repeatedly appears in a lot of his commentaries. Or avidya kalpita, he used the term, which means that, what does this mean? Because I am ignorant of the Shastra knowledge, because I'm ignorant of because of not knowing what the Bhagavad Gita teaches, for example, that's the reason why I'm experiencing this sense of individuality, which is separate from the world. And because of that, I suffer. Now, we need to be very clear about this. I go through dissatisfaction. I am unhappy a lot of time, most of the time. And I feel that I cannot be filled up to feel complete. Why? Because of this. Because I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant about the nature of myself and nature of Purusha, nature of Bhagavan. If I know that, I'll be free. So those who don't see this truth, that Shastra, Gita use the word vimudha, deluded. It's a very strong word, but we don't have to use it in that strong terms to understand it that way. It literally means a person who is confused, isn't it? Right? Is confused. And because of the confusion, the person has a distraction with the objects of enjoyment, seen and unseen. What is seen and unseen? Seen means what you see right now. What is unseen? What comes after our death, or it can be punya. All right? That means I want merit that I can encash later. That is also the unseen objects. So this is why I experience samsara. And the question here, why do we not see the self as Purusha? Because Purusha is in all beings, which we saw as the liberation. Why do we not see the self? Why do we not see myself as the Purusha? Or why do I not see myself as consciousness? Here, the answer comes. Because of mental impurities. What is in the way? Because the mind has some mala. Mala means impurity here. And why did this mala build up? It built up because of lack of tapas, meaning austerities, leading to sensory overwhelm, too much of sensory engagement, and also doing wrong actions, adharmic actions, and sometimes also vanity, pride, also comes in the way. Pride here means attachment to the ego, all right? The egoistic, what I call tendency, it's there. Now we move to the next question. Then what is the nature of the self? The nature of the self, here is, Shankara gives a very nice illustration here, very helpful. He says, the jiva, individual, is like the reflection of the sun in the water. He says, you know, if you have many, many pots of water, you will see 1,000 suns, correct? If 1,000 pots, 1,000 suns, but the sun is only one, correct? You see that now? Beautiful illustration. Sun is one, but it gets reflected in 1,000 pots. Each one of us are like a pot. He says if you remove the water, the sun, where does the sun go? It goes back to the reflected sun goes back to the one sun, right? He says, that's the example he gives. If the jivatvam is there, then you see the reflection. If the jivatvam is not there, individuality is not there, what happens? You see yourself as that one consciousness. And that's how you get liberated. Another example he gives is a pot space. What is pot space? If you take a pot, any pot, inside the pot there is space, isn't it? Correct? Outside the pot there is also space, correct? So there is pot space, one space, and then there's outside there is another space. When you break the pot, where does the pot space go? Did it merge with the outside space, or was it always part of that outside space? You see that now? So there is only one space. You see that now? The one space seems to be contained, right, in a container called pot. Therefore, there is a pot space. So he gives another example. Though you think that you are an individual with a what I call limited consciousness, but actually your consciousness is part of the cosmic consciousness, which is Bhagavan, which is Ishvara, etc. Here, this is another example that comes. So therefore, the individuality is not separate from the Purusha, not separate from Bhagavan, like the way reflected suns are not separate from the sun or the pot space from space. This is the nature of the self. With that, now we move to the next question. What do I need to do to achieve the final goal? Isn't it desirable? Correct? Is the final goal desirable? The final goal, liberation, is always desirable. Because when we experience suffering, we are looking for happiness. Therefore, it is desirable. How do we get there? Here, the Gita and the Bhashakara, Shankara says, is through the weapon of detachment. The term is asanga. Is sharpened by the sharpening stone of discriminative insight. So two things are required. Number one is detachment. This detachment is detachment from the tree, the samsara tree, samsara vriksha, or the tree of samsara. Now, we need to be detached from the sensory engagements and action, number one. But that is not good enough, sufficient. We also need the knowledge that is called discriminative insight, or viveka, it is called. Meaning that there is also some reasoning required with respect to knowledge that have been taken, that we have acquired from the Shastra. Here, the Bhagavad Gita helps us. So, yes, I am detached, but I also need the knowledge. And this is where we look at the Bhagavad Gita as a repository of knowledge. That is why there's this opening in the Gita Dhyanam that Manjulaji chanted earlier, Sarvo Panishado Gavaha Dogda Gopala Nandanaha, that beautiful shloka. It means that the Bhagavad Gita is nothing but the essence, distilled essence of the Upanishads. Right? So that's why the Bhagavad Gita is so important and so helpful, because it distills the what I call the essence of all the Upanishads and gives us such a way that we can live our lives in a very beautiful and meaningful and purposeful way. So coming back to the question, what do I need to do? I only need to do two things: cultivate detachment and also acquire viveka, which is through scriptural knowledge. These are two things that I need to do to get there. Then next question, where is this truth of liberation seen? Right? Good question. Where do I see it? Where do I see that truth of liberation? A lot of time we think that the liberation is taking place somewhere, but here the Gita tells us something very interesting. It says the truth of liberation is seen in oneself, in the buddhi, which is intellect. Very beautiful. Every one of us in this room has an intellect, correct? If you said yes to this question, that means you have an intellect. Okay, that's the proof. So if you have an intellect, that means this truth can be seen in that thing that you said yes just now. So if you can say yes, that means you can see this truth. That's what it means. Because it's always available in the buddhi. Sometimes this word buddhi is used in our scriptures as hridaya. Hridaya means heart. Whenever the term heart is used, it refers to the buddhi, means intellect. So if you have an intellect, if you said yes just now, that means you can see it. You can, that means it's already there. That's what it means. It's within oneself that is being shared. And here the Gita again says, he, Purusha, consciousness, dwells in the heart. What does the heart here means? The buddhi, the intellect of all beings. So that means, is there any point in time, my friends, where you are separate from Purusha? Is there 1 second where you can be separate from Purusha? Think about it. It's not possible. It is not possible that we can be separate from Bhagavan even a millisecond. You are always not separate from Bhagavan. This is the beauty, because it's always available, and that knowledge that he is available as not separate is available in the intellect. That's what this particular verse says. Then here's a very important point, which is memory, knowledge, and forgetfulness is determined by the Lord. So beautiful. I love this particular point that the Gita teaches. It says, what you remember is decided by the Lord. What you forget is also determined by the Lord. What you take, that whole knowledge, is also decided by the Lord. So if that is the case, when you forget something, what do you say? It's meant to be forgotten. If you remember something, it's meant to be remembered. So when I learned with my teacher, one thing that I loved is he said, don't take notes, because you know why? If you take notes, you're trying to remember. So he said, just listen. Sometimes you just have to listen, because you'll remember what you need to remember. Sometimes while taking notes, we are distracted actually. I'm not sure if you've encountered multitasking. So we can actually not registering what is being heard actually. So what is remembered, what is forgotten, what is same as knowledge is also determined by Bhagavan here. So what does that tell us? This is also another point that we see. How to then remember? Shankara makes a very beautiful point in his commentary. He says that if you want to enhance your memory and you want to remember, he says, do more punya. Look at this beautiful thing. Acquire more punya. When you do good deeds, like for example, puja, serving others, japa, recitation, chanting, meditation, when you do all of this, it will lead you to memory. You know why memory is important? Because what you learn is stored in the memory. So memory is a very important function for knowledge. So if you want to enhance your memory, Shankara says, do more good deeds, do more satkarma, good karmas, do puja, do meditation, serve others, chanting, any kind of action, when it leads to punya, it actually aids memory. And when memory is there, it helps you, because why? Memory is the repository of knowledge. So for example, today we learn about the Gita. There's a chance tomorrow you might forget it. Correct? Or don't even tomorrow. After the class is over, you might forget it. Correct? It's also possible, because it depends on the memory and you can't choose it. You can't decide. That's why I'm saying we cannot decide what we remember. Our memory is like just a magnified or amplified version of the goldfish memory, as they would say. So what we hold is very important. What we hold is depends on punya. Now, this also leads us to mental health challenges. I'm not sure if you've heard of depression, people with depression. One of the things that happens with people with depression is that their memory automatically repeats. They call this rumination. So rumination also happens because uncontrolled naturally happens. So how do we overcome this? We look at it from the Gita perspective, it can be actually overcome. And how do we overcome this? You don't overcome this by working on just the depression alone. Yes, you have to get some support. We have to acknowledge this. But you need to also find ways to generate a lot of punya. You see the point now? So when you do a lot of punya, it provides a very solid container to handle the problem. So you cannot face the problem directly. You see, you face the problem directly, it might not help. I'm saying, may not be as effective. It may go, it may come back, because it's a rumination. It keeps coming again and again and again. You don't have a choice over it. So you work through what I call generation of more punya, and in the process, and knowledge as well, very important knowledge, and the knowledge has the ability to counter depressive thoughts. It is very, very powerful. So today, when you look at today, there's some people, we see a pandemic of depression, actually. It's increasing. Anxiety, depression, etc. How can we look at it from the Gita perspective? We look at verses like this. It's very helpful. That means you don't just try to mitigate or try to go against the depression directly, but you need to build also a container. So what do? Help others, do chanting, do this, and also see your therapist. Okay, I'm saying do both, not just without the therapist. See your therapist, but also do this. And then you find a very holistic way of handling these such challenges. Now, from here, we go to the next question. How do I see it now? It is seen in the mind, but how do I see it? I can see the true nature of the jiva when seen through the pramana. Here the term pramana means shastra pramana or shabda pramana, which refers to the Vedas or the Upanishads. Even the Gita is included here because the Gita is Upanishad Sara, meaning that it's the essence of the Upanishads, essence of the Veda. So how do we see this? I can see this through the Shastra alone. So I need to be exposed to the Gita, etc. And here, the Bhagavan also says, Shankara also says, is unfolded through the Vedanta Sampradaya. Sampradaya means the tradition of teaching. Vedanta means what the Gita is teaching, which is the knowledge of the Upanishad. Vedanta here means the knowledge of the Upanishads, the tradition of teaching, the knowledge of the Upanishads. That's how you see it. And here, Ishvara, Krishna says that he is the original teacher of the Vedanta Sampradaya. Very beautiful. He's the first teacher, actually. He's the first teacher. That's why in the opening chant, I said Sadashiva Samarambham. It starts with Sadashiva, or it can be even Narayana Samarambham, doesn't matter. It starts with Ishvara as the first teacher. So he is the Sampradaya Krit, meaning that he is the one who created the teaching. This knowledge comes from the Lord. That's why everyone who teaches this knowledge, he is not the inventor. He or she is not the inventor of this knowledge. Every word that I say, if it benefits you, it's not mine, actually. Right? All of this comes from this tradition, which is called Sampradaya. With this, we have covered now chapter 15, the questions. Here is the answer to the questions. What is the final goal? Liberation. What is the problem? Samsara. Why do I experience samsara? Ignorance and its effects. Because I'm ignorant, I experience samsara. What is the nature of the self? It is of the same nature of the Purusha, consciousness. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do to achieve the final goal? Detachment and discrimination is required. Where is this truth seen? In my intellect, in my buddhi. You have an intellect, I have an intellect. That means it can be seen. How do I see it? Through the scriptures. This is the summary of chapter 15. If you're ready, let's go to chapter 16 now. Chapter 16 is called Daiva Sura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. Now, what is chapter 16? Chapter 16 has 24 verses. Sections, a set of verses talk about the divine qualities, which is called Daivi Sampati. Next one is verse 4. It's verse 4. It calls about demoniac qualities. Verses 5 to 6 talk about twofold created beings in this universe. And then the next set of verses talk about the thought, beliefs, and behaviors of demoniac persons. And the next set of verses talk about the gateway to hell. Okay. Now, the hell is a metaphor here. Okay. And 22 to 24 talks about scriptures as the means to happiness and liberation. In the last chapter also, we spoke about scriptures, didn't we? Right? Scriptures is the way that we get there. Here, the same point is repeated. Now, let's look at what Adi Shankara says about why chapter 16. Why chapter 16 is important for us. Let's look at that first. He says, this chapter is an elaboration of what was taught in chapter 9, verse 12, he says. It's like a commentary on this verse, he says, because there it is referred to of this quality, he says. Sort of an elaboration. He says, why is this important? Because it helps us to cultivate the divine qualities and shun the demoniac qualities, he says. And then, why is these qualities important? Because divine qualities leads to liberation. The demoniac ones leads to samsara, or even it binds us, he says. So that's why the contrast is there, my friends. Why are these two present? One set of qualities lead us towards liberation. The other one continue to bring us to samsara, he says. And how does it do it? How do the demonic qualities bind us? He says, destroys the self by disabling purushartha, he says. The demoniac ones, the demonic qualities, if we have it, it destroys ourself. It is as good as killing ourselves. Why? Because it disables purushartha. What is the meaning of purushartha? It means purpose. It robs us of our purpose. When we don't have purpose, it's as good as, not living our lives, happily. It's as good as destroying ourselves. And then it also talks about a realistic expectation over the existence of divine and demonic population. This is very unique. I'll talk about this later. And I am going to unfold the summary of chapter 16 through these questions. Okay, so I have 6 questions that I'm going to answer. What are the divine qualities? What are the demoniac qualities? Will the demonic people ever cease to exist in the world? This is a very important question, isn't it? All the time we see some, megalomaniac, some guy who is causing so much or trouble in the world, causing wars, creating, killing people, etc. These are demonic people. Will they ever cease to exist? The Gita gives a very unique answer. All right. What is the impact of demonic behaviors? If we have such behaviors, what's the impact? How to overcome these demonic qualities and behaviors? It gives a solution as well, not just provide the problem. How to overcome the three levers of demonic qualities and behaviors. Okay, I'm going to answer these questions. I hope this might be beneficial to you as well. All right, so let's look at the first question now. What are the divine qualities? In the Gita, you can see about 26 qualities as divine qualities. So these are the ones. I'm not going to go through them, but I'm going to give you the list. You can look at these verses and refer to them. But I'm telling you very interesting. We have 26 right here. 26 qualities. How many days in a month do we have? About 30. If 30 is close to 26, okay, just so that you know. So just imagine if you take one value a day, is it possible to cultivate it? Yes or no? Is it possible? Correct? If we want to cultivate these divine qualities that lead us to liberation, we can easily take a step forward. But let's say you take a screenshot of this, if you would like, or if you have the Bhagavad Gita, keep it handy. One quality a day. First day can be fearlessness. Second day, can I have more pure thoughts? Pure thoughts means wholesome thoughts. Third day, can I be persistent in knowledge and meditation? Fourth day, can I do some charity? Fifth day, can I take some vow? Can I stay away from something I like? You see that now? Every day can become a sadhana, isn't it? This is the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Every day can become a sadhana. 26 qualities we have here, right, to get there. So, and this is an opportunity that we have. So, I would like to invite all of you, if you think that liberation is your goal, why not? Every day take one quality and practice it. All right? And then if you can, I would also encourage you to journal it. Journaling. At the end of the day, write some notes how it was when you practice this particular value. One thing beautiful is practicing the value itself. Trying to practice it itself gives us punya, gives us merit. That's the beauty of this. So why not take one every day and try to practice this? Next one. Now, next question. What are the demonic qualities? Here you go. 26 versus 6, only 6 demonic qualities. It's very interesting. So it looks like to cultivate the divine qualities more difficult than manifesting the demonic qualities, isn't it? There is some truth in it. I'll talk about this in a while. There is some truth in this statement. The Gita, Bhagavan, only gives 6 demonic qualities. But you know what? He doesn't end there. He does something else that is brilliant, I'm telling you. You know what's the brilliance of here, Bhagavan Krishna, or even Vyasa, who was instrumental in writing the Gita, right? What is that? He says, these 6 qualities transforms into demonic behaviors and attitudes. So these are qualities. These qualities give birth to a particular types of behaviors and attitudes. And here, these 6 become many. And then he presents all of these behaviors. Look at this. The various behaviors that comes out of that 6. The verses 16, verses 7 to 19 in the Gita present this. Very, very interested. You can see, for example, bad conduct, not being truthful. They believe no God or there's no morality in the world. Lust is the primary driver, meaning that instinctive desire is primary. Given to cruel deeds, motivated by pride, arrogance, and hypocrisy. Look at that. And here, Shankara in his commentary makes a very unique point. He says, why is the Shastra, why is the Gita giving this breakdown, making it very, very explicit? Very, very explicit. I see a comment by Srinivasanji. You see, perhaps Krishna factored Sundays being rest days. Yeah, potentially. Absolutely. Yeah, take a rest for some of the days. And you get shorter rest in the month of February for sure. Okay, so coming back, So here, Shankara makes a very important point. He says, why did Bhagavan made the demoniac qualities explicit by giving behaviors? So he said, when the qualities or the behaviors are presented explicitly, meaning very descriptively, it is easier to avoid them. You see the point now? Very beautiful word statement he says. It's easier to avoid because, for example, if you look before the previous slide, if I say, do I have arrogance? Do I have pride? You know something? Our self-serving bias will say, no, I'm not a proud person. I'm not angry. The angry person usually say, I'm not angry. It's very strange, right? If I'm angry, I will say, no, I don't get angry. So it's easier to circumvent, skirt the issue or say that I'm not having it. So what the Shastra does, it makes it explicit so you can't run away from it. Or rather, I would rather put it this way, we can catch ourselves when it emerges, when the behavior emerges. Can you see that now? So the Shastra here, the scripture, the Gita, makes the implicit explicit. All right, makes the implicit explicit here. So then moving on, right? So the next question, now that we looked at the demonic behaviors, now, will the demoniac people ever cease to exist in the world? Very important point, because we think we have this expectation sometimes, isn't it? Right? Like, Duryodhana or Ravana, or today we have modern Duryodanas and modern equivalents of Ravanas in the world as well. So will they ever cease to exist? Can we have that expectation? You know what's the Gita's answer? You know the answer. Yes or no? Will they ever cease to exist? No. They will never cease to exist. And here, the Gita says that there are two types of people who are born into this world. Very beautiful, born like that, born this way. Okay, born this way, he says. And they are called Asura and Daiva. And this particular point is actually expressed even in the Upanishad. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, this same point is made. In that Upanishad, Prajapati, which is Brahmaji, the creator of the world, he created both asuras and gods, devas, he said. Devas, the Upanishad says. So, and there's one other thing that, the Shastra says. Can you tell me, are there more asuric tendencies in the world or more godly tendencies in the world? Which one is more? Maybe you can type it under the chat if you would like. Which one is more asuras or more devas? Give it a shot. Yeah, I see someone has said Asuric. How many of you? Yeah, go ahead and type it if you would like. Which one is more? Yeah. So interestingly, you know what the Shastra says? There are more Asuric people, the Shastra says. And do you know why? Because the reason is that there's a very nice qualifier here. Because what is considered Asura here, according to the Shastra, is the direction of our energy towards the internal world or the external world. That differentiates. So Shankara makes a very nice point in that commentary. He says the divine qualities allow you to look within. The asura, the demoniac qualities, creates an uncontrollable, insatiable desire to go outside and relate with the external world. So the asura here, the demonic qualities, is technically a quality that is born with an obsession with the outside world of objects. I use the word obsession because when you have a positive relationship with the world, it's not a problem, isn't it? Correct? True? Think about it, right? If you have a positive relationship with the objects in the world, we don't have a problem. The problem begins when we obsess and really attach. That's why the word detachment came earlier. I'm attached to the world of the objects and I get obsessed over it. When that happens, the asura tendencies come up. But here is a very important qualifier. These tendencies they come up along with our birth. This is the important point. So some of us may be born with this proclivity, that means this tendency of exploring the outside world, being obsessed. But does that mean that I cannot change? That's not true. We can change. That's the difference here. But we need to acknowledge that some of us are born in this way, All right. And then another way to look at it is some of us, within us, there is the Deva and the Asura. Correct. Isn't it? Right. Within us, there is also a Deva and Asuras. So that is also something we can see. So the Shastra here says the two types of people who are born into this world because of the tendencies, and because one reason is past karma. The past karma that we do determines the next birth, anyways, which we're going to see in a while. So this should be seen as tendencies with which people are born with. That means the tendencies of what we have within is the one that determines whether it's demoniac or it is divine. And we can do something about it, which we'll see in a while. So with that now, the Shastra then, Bhagavad Gita then talks about what is the impact of this demoniac behavior. So if I have this demoniac behaviors, what's the impact? What is the result? So here, very beautifully, Krishna Bhagavan says that it violates the Lord, violates Purusha in all beings, including oneself. That means when we continue to cultivate these demoniac qualities and we don't do anything about it, what are we doing? We are actually going against the nature of Bhagavan. You see that point now? We are going against the nature of Bhagavan, who is within us, or consciousness which is within us, and also in all beings. So what do? We end up hurting ourselves. This is a very, very important point that we don't see. We hurt ourselves and we hurt others as well in the process. So when we continue to nurture these demoniac behaviors, what will happen is we will hurt ourselves, we hurt others. You know, when we hurt ourselves, it doesn't end there. It becomes other mental health problems, I'm telling you. You know, a lot of mental health issues, you know, if you look at psychology in the field of psychology and the evidence that we see, a lot of mental health issues are born not just from our tendencies, but social factors, things that are outside of ourselves and the way that we relate with the world. So how others look at us can actually cause a problem. How others look at us and how we see that perception can also cause a challenge. You can see that now. That's why we realize these demoniac behaviors and qualities actually contribute to that. It actually exacerbates the problem. And therefore, we have to now deal with it. That's why I see, like, for example, we think Bhagavad Gita is a scriptural text alone. I'm telling you, the Bhagavad Gita is a spiritual text alone. But I'm telling you, the spirituality does not exclude mental health. We need to be very, very clear. All the scriptures contribute and talk about positive mental health, because without positive mental health, liberation cannot be attained. So therefore, because positive and good mental health is important, scriptures promote that first. So that's why if spirituality or studying the Gita, more importantly, practicing what the Gita says, can be a very, very good prevention for everyone from being what I call being given to such mental health issues. So that's why the Gita is always relevant. It's a perennial, you know, it is what I call scripture for all of us. So what happens then? Next point, repeated birth in demonic wombs. What he says, when we continue to do this, what happens? We keep being born in demoniac wombs. What is demonic wombs? That means I may be born in another family that has these demonic behaviors. You see that now? So it's like what we call as a downward spiral. So that's why we call it, the Shastra says, it will continue to sink lower and lower into being born as less sentient beings. So I may be born as an animal, or I may be born in another what I call couple who may have this same demoniac behavior. So it's a double whammy actually, right? It's a double whammy. You keep going downwards. It's a downward spiral. So that's why we need to break that cycle. It's very important. And how do we do it? Again, as always, the Bhagavad Gita has a solution, right? So how to overcome these demoniac qualities and behaviors? Here's a very beautiful method that the Bhagavad Gita teaches. Let's now take a step back and look at what we've discussed. Demoniac qualities produce demoniac behaviors, correct? I hope that you are seeing this. Demonic qualities produce demonic behaviors. Now, how to overcome these demonic qualities and demonic behaviors? We overcome it by working on three levers. Levers are basically things that you press or you can enable something, right? What are the three levers that enable this? So the Bhagavad Gita, having presented the 6 qualities of demonic qualities, and then the various demonic behaviors, and then it said that you can look, if you want to control them, you need to reduce them because they are all caused by 3 levers. And what are these 3 levers? Lust, anger, greed, it says. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, it says. Now you don't have to remember the demonic qualities. You don't have to remember the demonic behaviors anymore. You can let go after examining them. You work on just 3. What is this? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, it says. So how do you manage that? Now here comes the beautiful teaching of Gita again. How to solve this now? How to overcome this? So here is the solution. He says, Bhagavan says, to tackle these 3 levers, there is only one button. One button that will disable all the 3 levers, which is lust, anger, and greed. How does it disable? Shastra, Veda. That's it. So in this case, like for example, Bhagavad Gita is enough. Because why? Bhagavad Gita is the distilled essence of the Upanishads or the Veda. That alone is enough, he says. And then he goes on. So what do we need to do? We need to have a sense of surrender to the Shastra. Now, this is very, very important. You see, look at this. We have discussed so much things in the last 55 minutes that each one of them can be unpacked for hours, isn't it? We can go deeper and deeper. So every verse of the Gita, especially from chapter 2 to 18, even chapter 1 is a good example of understanding challenges, mental challenges. You can see that we can learn so many things from each verse of the Gita. So we need to surrender to the Shastra. Now, when I use the word surrender, some of us get very, what I call, shaken, because there is this vulnerability. We don't like to be vulnerable, isn't it? Correct? We don't like, as humans, we don't like to be vulnerable, because surrender gives the thing, I need to surrender. Here, surrender to the Shastra means not literally surrender. It means that we give importance to the knowledge of the Gita. We give that license for Bhagavad Gita to be right first, and for us to examine that it is right. That is what we call as faith. This faith pending discovery, as we call it in Sanskrit, is called Shraddha, which is very, very important for us. And that is the kind of surrender that is required. I have faith in the knowledge of the Gita or the Shastra. Very important. And then the Gita says, when we surrender to the Shastra, have faith in the Shastra and what it teaches, it can lead us to 3 things: accomplishments. We can become more accomplished. If you look at Arjuna in the Mahabharata, he's a very accomplished person, isn't he? Correct? Very accomplished. Look at Krishna in the Mahabharata, very accomplished. So you can see that the receiver, the one who received the Gita, very accomplished. And eventually he continues to be accomplished. He said, when the knowledge leads us to accomplishments, Siddhim is Sukham, and Paramgatim means liberation. Here, moksha it means. So when we have faith in the Shastra and learn the knowledge of the Shastra, it leads us to even accomplishments in our life. And all these are obviously dharmic accomplishments, and also pleasures, comfort in our life through punya that we gain, and also eventually liberation. And then the statement comes, therefore, we follow the Shastra's teachings of what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. This is the key point. So how do we overcome lust, anger, and greed? We follow the Shastra's teachings as to what we should do and what we should not do. So basically, it's better for us to see the value in Shastra and then follow it, because it gives us the greatest well-being compared to anything else. And bringing a sense of dutiful attitude towards living. So duty, when we start to look at the Shastra as a guidance for us, then it becomes, we surrender to that wisdom of the Shastra. Of course, not surrender means not blind faith, very well-informed, very enlightened faith. In that sense, when we surrender, then we bring this dutiful attitude towards our life. And when we do that, we can overcome Kama, Krodha, Lobha. And when we overcome lust, anger, and greed, we overcome the demonic behaviors. When we overcome the demonic behaviors, the demonic qualities are removed. And what happens? We are now very, very well placed to cultivate the divine qualities. With that, now we have covered chapter 16 summary. Let's look at the questions again. What are the divine qualities? 26 qualities enumerated. What are the demonic qualities? 6 qualities enumerated. What is the impact of the demonic behaviors? Repeated birth in demonic wombs, meaning that we continue to go in a downward spiral. Will the demonic people ever cease to exist in the world? No, let's be practical. Instead of looking at others, we look at ourselves and contribute to the world. That's all we need to do. All right, is what it means. How to overcome these demonic qualities and behaviors? Letting go of anger, lust, and greed. And how to let go of these? Follow the Shastra's teachings as to what is to be done and what ought to be done. With that, it's now 12 p.m. in Singapore. I've covered what I needed to cover. Bhagavad Gita, chapters 15 and 16. And I hope this was in some way valuable as much it was valuable for me personally in my life. Thank you. Thanks. Over to you, Ji.
Thank you, Kadirji. Thank you for that beautiful and very practical means of approaching chapters 15 and 16. So the take that you had in not going shloka by shloka, but in terms of bringing in your own experience, your own questions, and then in a form of what a sadhaka would do in terms of seeking answers to those questions and taking us along in that journey. I think it was very refreshing and very relatable to all of us. I will shortly open for question and answer for questions from the audience. But before we open for questions, I just want to remind everyone that exactly a month ago, on the 1st of December, we are going to have the Sampurna Gita Parayan, or the chanting of all of the 18 chapters of the Gita, to be held at PGP Hall from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Please register. Please request your friends and family register so that we can all get together. Kadir was talking about how important it is to do the puja and the chanting and to get all of the punya so that we can accumulate all of that and lead to clarity of our mind. So this is one of the opportunities to do that and to be in the presence of more than 300 people who are going to be chanting the Gita simultaneously. So please do register for this Sampurna Gita Parayan. I'll now stop the share and the floor is open. If you have questions, please do unmute and ask of our speaker today. If you have questions that you want to put in chat, please do put in chat also. Yes, I see Saraswati ji is unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yes, good morning. Kadreshan, nice meeting you after so many years. Anyway, coming back to the question, Kama, Krodha, Moha, Lobha, Mada, Matsarya. Those are the Shad Ripus which we need to remove. That's what we were talking about. Now, according to our Shastra, it says that we come with the Mano, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara. All those memories which is coming from Matrujam, Pitrujam, Janmajam, Arjitam. All those memories, we are playing with those memories in our day-to-day life. Okay, now only we can remove the ignorance only by reading the text or with the samparka of the good souls or atmas. But how when we are coming with those what do you call for that karmas or prarabdha karmas, then when my mind needs to be there to change myself, or whether I have to continue whatever I had my willing or my desire to fulfill in this Janma. So these are the two conflict questions here. How I can change myself when I'm not interested to change it because I need to finish my prarabdha karma through the desires. You got my question? Yeah, thank you, Kati.
Yeah, so thank you, Saraswati ji. Great to see you after so many years as well. So the question presupposes the fact that even my actions are given to the prarabdha karma, right? That is, it's regulated by the prarabdha karma. So it's a very great question. I think it's a question not just, I think, valuable for you as the person who has brought this question, but all of us, even every one of us go through this. Because we work with the karma that has brought us into our lives and will continue to exist and persist and influence us till the body falls. That's one important point. But I'm going to give you an illustration for everyone in the room that will be very helpful. I'm not sure if you play card games, card games. So when we play card games, the card dealer will deal you a set of cards. Now that cards, the set of cards that are dealt to you, you have no choice. Am I right? The cards come to you. What kind of cards, spades, you have no choice. But you know what? After you pick up the cards and you see all the cards, how you win the game now depends on your skill, isn't it? You see that now. So prarabdha karma, the karma that has given us this birth, gives us all of this, the apparatus with all the tendencies, as you have mentioned. But I still have this choice that I can use, provided there is skill. Now, that skill, which is something that we acquire in this life, some of us might be more predisposed to acquiring these skills. Some of us, because of the downward spiral that we spoke about, may be less inclined or may not have the opportunity to have access. But less opportunity doesn't mean no opportunity. So the way then is, the way we do this is different strokes for different folks, isn't it? Right? Some of us who may have the opportunity readily available, we gravitate automatically with very less support. But some of us who may be more given to that downward spiral, the strength with which it comes. One good example is Duryodhana. In one text, it's called the Pandava Gita. It says, Duryodhana supposedly said this: I know what is right, but I can't do it. I know what is wrong, but I can't stop myself from doing it. You see that? Yeah. You see, so this is what you're saying. So why does this happen? So some of us are in that strong downward spiral. We need a lot of support. Some of us may not need as much support. But regardless, like the card game, the card has been dealt, that we have no choice. How we play the game, that we have choice, provided we have skills. Yeah. I hope that supports in some way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji.
There is a question in the chat. In chapter 15, it was stated memory, knowledge, and forgetfulness are gifted by Ishvara. So how does a demonic person gain this grace as they may not believe in punya?
All right. Thank you for this question. Now, you see, you have actually answered, Raviji, in the question itself. You use the word believe. If it does not believe in punya, so that is called, there is a term that is used, which is shraddha. You see, to appreciate what the Shastra is saying, there must be some shraddha. And that is also something that comes with prarabdha, as what Saraswati ji has talked about. Sometimes we have this faith that can support us. For some of us, we need a greater push to discover this faith in the Shastra when we see some validity. And so one of the important component is, how does a demonic person or a person given to demonic tendencies gain this grace, is that the person needs to first cultivate this shraddha. Now, and one way that I always say is, we use faith through every day of, in our lives, actually. When you go to the bus stop, you have faith that the bus would arrive, correct? True? Right? When we go to bed every night, when we lie down, do you know that we can't predict what time we fall asleep? But we have faith that we will fall asleep. So every day I'm actually exercising this faith, and I'm using it, and it's benefiting me, and I see sometimes results, sometimes I might not see results. We live with this hope and faith every day. We use it every day. I would then tell the demonic person, now that you've seen that you've used this faith every day in your life, why not try, give it a shot? I would say, I would use the word, experiment. Do an experiment for a couple of months with what the scripture says and see whether you see results. So that way, I am not what I call trying to forcefully or coerce the person to believe in the scripture, but rather I'm asking that person to experiment with what that scripture teaches and see whether you see some good results. And as always, the Shastra only gives us the highest well-being, either in the form of Shreyas, liberation, or prayers, worldly security and well-being. So such a demoniac person could then give it and give an opportunity to themselves to expose to the Shastra and see how it benefits them. And you and I, every one of you in the room may know there is no way the Shastra will give any kind of negative results. It comes from Bhagavan, it comes from Ishvara, it only confers positive results. And the demonic person can discover this, but that faith is required. So if the faith is not there, then it's very difficult. But the question is that a guarantee that the demonic person will then believe? That's not a guarantee, as what Saraswati ji just brought to the room just now. Sometimes the downward spiral is so strong that someone cannot see that in this birth. Like Duryodhana. Duryodhana is a good example, right? In this life, he could not see it, but maybe in the future life, he might have seen it in some through their good actions. I hope that answers the question, Raviji.
Other questions? There's a question from Srinivasanji in the chat. How do we develop faith in Shastras in our day-to-day life?
So how to develop faith in the Shastras in day-to-day life is, I will give you a different probably response. One of the popular responses that I've heard is study the Shastra and see whether it makes sense. Okay, that's the popular response that I've seen. I would like to add one more point. Identify a problem in your life and then go and do a Google search. Nowadays, you can even use ChatGPT if you would like. Identify a problem that you have in your life. Go to ChatGPT or Google search and ask, what are the solutions according to Hindu scriptures to resolve that problem? And then you look at all the solutions and try that out. But one thing I will tell you is when the ChatGPT gives a response, do fact check it, because sometimes it gives wrong references. So do fact check it and then look at what the Shastra says and try it out. And when you see results, you can cultivate the faith. So that way we can do it. Now, the other thing is also, it also pertains to the problems. What kind of problems we bring to the Shastra. So I would say, in addition to that Google search and ChatGPT, also look for a Shastri. Shastri means someone who has understood the Shastras very well. And if possible, someone you trust. And also bring that solutions to that person to do another layer of, what I call process checking or validity, checking, verification. So after you consulted the Shastri, bring the solutions that you have found, bring it to the Shastri and get their views. And after that, practice it. And then you see whether there are results or not. Now, that way you can then, after you see the results, you can cultivate faith. This is for people who want to cultivate faith. People who already have the faith, there is no problem. But if I'm really bereft of that faith and I need to cultivate it, identify a problem, because we only have faith in something when it has produced results, isn't it? Correct? We need to see results. So to see results, I must bring a problem. If there is no problem in my life, how would I cultivate faith? By looking at a solution. No solution without a problem. So therefore, look for that. Identify the problem, look for the possible solutions, consult a Shastri, a person who's very well informed in Shastra, and then try to practice it. And then share with the person also. Maybe some parts need to be tweaked, and then you will see the results. And then that's a good way of actually cultivating faith. It's easier to cultivate faith when you see results. When there are no results, then what happens? It becomes blind faith. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? While you might be thinking of other questions, I just want to share one more information on the upcoming. So we already talked about the Parayan on the 1st of December. The next session in the series of online Gita Parayan and Satsang, which we are having, is going to be 2 weeks from now. It's going to be on the 15th of November at 10:30 a.m. The URL to register is the same. You can go to gitajayanti.org.sg, and there you will find the link to register for the online Gita Parayan. So please do register for that also. We will have a subsequent Parayan also on the 28th of November, and that would be the final Parayan and Satsang for this year. And then, of course, in a month's time, we will also have the Sampurna Gita Parayan. Let me stop the sharing of the slides and look to see if there are any other questions in chat. There are a couple of, there is a question in the chat, Kadirji.
Yep, I see one question from Gomati ji, which is, are there challenges reconciling the messages from the Gita and Shaivism? I don't think there is, because I'll tell you why. This is not my opinion. There are 2 Shaiva commentaries on the Gita. Now, the first one is from a teacher called Abhinava Gupta. Now, Abhinava Gupta gives Shaivism, what I call interpretation of the Gita. And there is also another one by Nilakantha. Now, Nilakantha Bhashyam, as it is said, also gives a Shaiva interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. So, Gomati ji, yes, there are no challenges, because we are talking about, if you, I know you heard what I was sharing earlier. When I used the word Purusha, I took the view that the Purusha can also be seen as consciousness. Now, when we look at Purusha as consciousness, then there is no challenges when we bring in specific ways in which we relate with consciousness or Ishvara, you know. So it doesn't matter whether it is Shiva, Narayana, Shakti, etc. But suppose you are looking for a text that is as similar to the Bhagavad Gita, all right? There is also something called Shiva Gita. There is also a text called Shiva Gita, which takes the same tenor of the Bhagavad Gita that can also be studied if you find that you have this very strong attraction towards Shiva. Then you can look at the Shiva Gita as well. However, coming back to your original question, the presence of 2 commentaries that we know, 2 very, 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 what I call respected commentaries by Abhinava Gupta and Nilakantha, show that the Shaiva, what I call interpretations of the Gita, are actually compatible to what the original Bhagavad Gita, the text, teaches. I hope that answers the question.
There's one more question which has come up.
Yeah, let me look at the question. The person recognizes. So if you see that someone is struggling and needs it, but they don't accept it, how do you lead them towards it? You see, so someone who is struggling, but they don't accept it, can I know what is it that they don't accept? I need to know that before I respond. They don't accept the struggle, or they don't accept the Shastra, etc. Both. Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying, Raviji. So if someone doesn't accept that they are struggling, then they cannot be changed, like Duryodhana. He didn't see that he was wrong. So if someone doesn't see it, it's very difficult to change such a person. So we need to be very, very practical here. If I feel that there is no problem, then there is no solution, isn't it? Right? So I need to recognize that there is a problem. In fact, Raviji, I want to say the recognition of me having the problem is itself due to punya. You know, we must acknowledge it, that sometimes we recognize the problem because of punya. So therefore, we cannot help. It's not very difficult to help such a person. Not cannot, but very difficult to help a person who does not see that he or she is struggling. Second perspective, which is does not accept the Shastra. Now, does not accept the Shastra, how do you help them? So it depends on the nature of the struggle. So some kind of struggles are secular struggles, like I don't have a job, I don't have money, I don't have a support system. These kind of struggles we can easily help without Shastra, I'm saying. Not that Shastra cannot help, but we can also help without the need of Shastra. But if we are talking about challenges that are existential, purpose, suffering, emotional challenges, etc., perhaps Shastra is probably way more well placed to support such needs. So how do we then help them? Again, coming back to the point, which is to cultivate faith. So how do you cultivate faith? Is through identifying a problem and showing them and getting them to practice some solutions that Shastras have offered. And when they practice those solutions and they see results, then they are more inclined, to try to solve the problem. So give them opportunities to try some methods and solutions from the Shastras to see the results. If you happen to be the person helping the person, then be there doing very frequent check-ins with them, like every 3 days, touch base with them. How are they doing with this solution? They said, I tried this work, this does not work. Then you can give some more ideas as to how the Shastra can further help them. So you walk with them. When people are struggling, when the struggle is very deep and very intense, sometimes we don't see a ray of light. I'm not sure if you have encountered this, when we go through a very difficult or very rough period in life, we can't see the ray of light that is there. That is why someone who has that faith to walk with that person can be that ray of light. So it requires a lot of compassion, kindness to do this. So Raviji, if you know someone like that, in life, it's very important for someone to walk with that person. So that when there's difficult moments, everything looks dark. So that person who has that faith can be supportive in the journey. I hope that provided some support to you as well to the question. Yeah. Thank you, Raviji.
Just waiting to see if there are any more questions. Okay, I don't see any more questions in chat, and I'm not noticing anyone unmuting either. So I think I want to take this opportunity on behalf of Gita Jayanti to thank Shri Kader, who has been our speaker for today, for conveying the message of the Gita in a very clear manner, and as well as for taking many of these questions and also giving very practical solutions to that. Thank you for that. Also, our thanks to Manjula ji for the beautiful chanting of chapters 15 and 16 of the Gita. We will conclude with closing prayers. Please join me. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnaat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Our next session, like I mentioned, will be on the 14th of November. Please join us for that session also. Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna.